Hey everybody, welcome to the second episode of Mean Green Game Day. I'm your host Armando Berry, and I am still here with the great group we have today. On my left we have Michelle Brooks, Rachel Dickens, and on my right, Connor Hibbett and Justin Ballou. To start off the show, we are going to take a look at the men's and women's teams' recent games that took place last night. Starting off with the ladies, after not being able to secure back-to-back wins since early December, the women's team came into yesterday's game against Florida Atlantic on a 4-game win streak, and they ended the game with the win 76-45 and making it 5 straight wins. Connor, I'm going to go to you on this one. FAU, dead last in the conference, or in their division. Team that they should have beat, they did beat. What were some of the highlights of this win, though?
And they beat convincingly, obviously, by 30 points. You just heard Armando give the score cap there. But to me, the most impressive thing was the improvement from the previous game, which was more ball movement and more players moving along the baseline, creating open shots, which is why we had one of our best offensive performances of the season. And then, of course, Jazzion Jackson all over the court. She was insane. And something I want to point out, with referees in basketball especially, when you have two players going towards the ball, they collide, and then there's a foul to be called. When the referee calls a foul, he's going to call it with the player who's more aggressive and against the player who's not as aggressive. And Jazzion Jackson was one of the most aggressive players on the court last night, and that's the kind of energy that I want to see from this point forward. And then, of course, the ball movement, which was the biggest key to the success of last night's victory.
Well, and Jazz has been one of those consistent key players throughout the season for this team. I'm glad you mentioned she does hustle after every single ball. I mean, she's that great defender, and she makes the difference. Quincy Noble, huge game for her last night, though, 24 points. And she's been improving, in terms of scoring throughout these last few games. But we really saw her play like we know that we needed her to play. She had 24 points and she couldn't miss. She went 4 of 5 from the three-point line. That's insane considering she really hasn't been making very many from the three at all. So just an encouraging win. They were finally playing in their systems. They looked extremely disciplined, especially right out there to start the game. I mean, those first couple offensive and defensive possessions, they worked the ball. They made good passes. They took good shots. They didn't settle for threes right off the bat, which they often do, and they don't often fall. So it was a good, just really well-played game by the Mean Green.
The girls' defense also has been definitely improving, and we thought for a while that, okay, this is a bad team. But no, they got 11 turnovers in the first half. They had 8. The other team just had 18 attempts, while the Mean Green shot 18 out of the 31 that they were able to get. Being able to see this was a huge improvement. Very nice to see. It's a great time to see it, especially with the West being kind of open. Everyone's like a game apart. This is the time to get hot. Great timing on the girls' part. Great timing on the coaches as well.
Well, and we haven't seen, a lot of consistency out of the Mean Green. Now they're finally on that win streak that we've been hoping to see. But it's kind of this FAU team, while on paper they don't have the greatest record, they're sneaky. They just came off a 3-point overtime loss to Western Kentucky. They barely lost to Rice by 1. They're kind of a threat a little bit. So the fact that the Mean Green came in and took care of business is major.
Yes.
It's 5 straight wins, red hot team, and it's really 2 straight dominant wins by this UNT team against 2 teams that are, lower tier in the conference in Rice and FAU. I really thought the last win against Rice, it was more of a testament to Rice just making mistakes and kind of playing a bad game as to why the score got kind of out of hand. But this game I really thought was a great all-around effort and a great game. Connor, you mentioned it. The passing was more on point. They were more decisive with their cuts and just with their decision making in general, and that really just allowed them to have a great game. It was a slow progression in this game. They were up 10 after the first quarter. They were up 17 at halftime, 24 at the end of the third quarter, and then ultimately won by 29. So they slowly progressed in this game, took some steps as the game went along. Michelle, you mentioned Quincy Noble, 24 points, great game from her. Jazzion Jackson and Kendall McGruder off the bench stepping up with 9 points in this game. As a team, just a great shooting performance, 50% from 3 in this game, 54% from the field overall. So this was just a great game. This was a potential look-ahead spot with the upcoming 3-game slate for this women's team, going against a 5-19 FAU team on the season. But credit them, they went into this game with the mentality of we're going to blow them out, and they did that, and now on to this big stretch coming up.
And something that I saw studying the film was that against Rice, they didn't react as well early on with the zone defense. They didn't move. You have to be able to pass ball, but in order to pass ball, you have to move to get open. And they weren't able to do that a lot against Rice in the previous series. But against Florida Atlantic, at times, especially in that second quarter, FAU would go to a zone defense. But what UNT would do well is they would move to the open spot and they would take the shot. They wouldn't try to go in for the layup or dunk, because that's not going to happen with a zone defense. You have to take the 5, the 6 to 7 foot medium range shots, and they were able to do that, and they were able to make a lot of those shots, which is a key improvement in the team, seeing that they know how to react to a change in the defense.
The key to beating any zone defense is ball movement, and the women's team has really struggled against zone defense, specifically this year, the 2-3 defense and the 1-1-3. But again, this game, they were cutting to the lane more, and they were getting those looks that they have been getting, those easy shots towards the rim, but they were making them in this game, and that was really great to see.
I agree with you. They did a lot of things they should have done on my checklist. They definitely cooled down their big scorer, Rita Pleskovic, and they gave more minutes to Magruder. I thought she did a great job off the bench in her 9 points in her 10 minutes, so very efficient. Moving on now for the men's game last night. A little bit closer, a little too close for comfort, but our Mean Green did get win number 11 in a row in a gritty game against FAU's men's team, 54-51. Michelle, what do you make of this one that really came down to a couple clutch free throws down the stretch?
Well, I said this last week, and I'm going to continue to say it again. This is that time of the season where those really good teams get upset. And this game, while UNT didn't lose the game, it's almost good that they had a close loss like this, because it shakes your confidence. I'm expecting UNT to now come out of this game even better than before, but you're allowed to have those kinds of games, and sometimes you do. I mean, it was a nitty-gritty game. I mean, grimy, gritty, that's what Grant McCaslin called it. FAU never backed down, so credit to them especially. I mean, we're a big threat in the conference, so I just think it's one of those games that you're going to have. Credit to UNT for pulling through, though, honestly.
You go ahead.
I know something I've hit on for the last few weeks is when you're in conference, you have to have good free throw shooting. And Thomas Bell ended up with only 50% from the free throw line. Those free throws were crucial in what ended up helping us win the game, but I would have liked to see a higher percentage, like 75% or something, because those are easy shots to win, and when you don't win that, it's really hard to win games on the road, and those are the games that can make a big difference.
And UNT was very clutch last season in close games, late second half. Of course, we had Javion Hamlin at the line most of that time, but if UNT just shoots better from the free throw line, this is going to be a team that's difficult to beat for the majority of teams in the country, not just Conference USA.
I know.
I think that a lot of people don't understand that Thomas Bell, he's our super senior. He did have a pretty good game, 13 points, 11 rebounds, but he got to the line 11 times. So he could have added at least another 10 more points just from that. But just on the defense was pretty good, though. They kept the FAU starters to 8 for 37 shooting, 8 for 37 shooting, 21%. So how did FAU stick around for so long in this game?
This was just UNT basketball at its finest. This was another game exactly like that La Tech game where you're on the road in an environment where the home team usually doesn't lose. La Tech, well, now they have 3 home conference losses, but they usually are a team that never loses at home. FAU had a 10-game home winning streak coming into this game. And it was just a game where, again, everything seemed like it was going FAU's way. UNT was 3 of 14 from three-point range, 13 of 21 on free throws. Dres McBride and Thomas Bell, as you mentioned, they're 2 great players, but they really struggled from the free throw line, and that was on full display in this game. UNT had double the amount of turnovers as FAU 2, 16-8, which really hurt them. And I thought the one key as to why FAU was able to stay in this game was Abu Usman got in foul trouble really early in this game. And not only did that limit what he could do against the 7'1" Vladislav Golden down in the paint, one of the only true centers in this conference, but it also made UNT revert to some small ball and play some of these guards more. They only ended up playing like 7 guys the whole game. Aaron Scott stepped in more, so they just had a bunch of guards running around in this game against 7'1" guys on the other side. So FAU just had the size advantage because of Abu's early foul trouble.
Which is kind of a switch up of what we've been seeing this Mean Green team play. I mean, we've been seeing Abu play big inside for this team consistently. Thomas Bell, same thing. So having to switch up the style of play is different, but credit to them once again for winning and pulling through.
And also, when Usman ends up hitting 5 field goals per game, or 5 field goals in a game, he ends up Mean Green are 9-0 when that happens, so it's always a great thing, and he was able to do that last night. It was a little close, I was a little worried, but he was able to pull that out, and UNT was able to pull out the victory. So maybe that will be helpful in the future.
It was a really sloppy first half, but they just went back and made those necessary halftime adjustments, and it ended up being a typical UNT box score. You had Tyler Perry, Thomas Bell leading the way, 13 points. Abu stepping up there, 12 points. Dres, 8. Ruben, 6. So just great all-around effort. Another big game this weekend.
Absolutely. Now we recapped our men's and women's team. Let's take a look at the rest of the conference when we come back from this break. Thanks for staying with us on Mean Green Game Day. We're about to dive into the rest of the men's side of CUSA college basketball. We're at a point in the season where a lot of teams are approaching their last chances to take advantage of the little wiggle room they have to move up and down those standings. Justin, I kind of want to go on this one. You were very passionate about this one. The men's side, it appears to stay pretty packed, but LA Tech with a surprising loss to UTEP. Tell me what you think about that one.
Yeah, things are starting to go wrong a little bit in Ruston. Prior to the season, like I mentioned in the last block, La Tech was really unbeatable at home, and now they have three home losses this season, all to CUSA West Division rivals, and UAB, UNT obviously, and then UTEP last night. But overall this season, as far as resume goes, the Bulldogs have pretty much beaten and lost to everyone that they're supposed to. They're 1-6 against the first two quads, which is pretty standard for a CUSA school. But they're 13-1 against the next two quadrants, quads 3 and 4. So they have 13 wins against the top 50 to 100 teams in the nation. So that's pretty good right there. I think what's really hurt them this season was the loss of Isaiah Crawford. They lost him in the third game of the season, and last year he was second on the team in scoring, second on the team in rebounding, one of their bigger, more physical guys, one of their leaders, their veteran guys. And they've, again, had to go small ball like UNT had to last night, and they've really gotten exposed against some of these bigger teams in the conference. You know, Kenneth Lofton's a big guy, but he can't handle all the force. So they've had to run a lot of small ball around Kenneth Lofton, and it's kind of hurt them. But they still have got games at UNT and at UAB, so they're still in this division race if they can pick up 2 wins there. But 3 home losses for La Tech is pretty unheard of with how they've been doing.
Well, and it's painful. I mean, especially with a program that is like them, and you have Lofton. He only had 12 points against UTEP. They really did shut him down, where you have Boom, who had 28 points and 12 rebounds. UTEP, not only that, they had 27 fouls, and Louisiana Tech only had 19. It was you can't take care of the ball. Free throws win games. Louisiana Tech shot 54% from the line. UTEP shot 76% from the free throw line. So things like that make that difference. You have to secure the ball, and they're just getting sloppy. And once you get into a slump this late in the season, it's really, really hard to dig your way out, and it's not good for this Louisiana Tech team.
I would say one thing with La Tech is that with losing players and with not being able to gain confidence, it's going to just diminish some of this. Hopefully they're able to maybe get something back, but I don't think they're going to be able to, and I don't think they're going to ultimately win the West. I think they're kind of out of it at this point, but there's a chance always.
This is just that point in the season where you see teams really, okay, they're going to make that big gap change, and they're going to be up here, and you're going to see those teams fall. And there's some threatening waters right now for this Louisiana Tech team.
But UTEP isn't a bad team. Like, I just want to make that known.
UTEP's a very good team.
I would say they're probably the 3rd scariest team for UNT to face down the stretch in the conference tournament. We played them in the last game of the season, too. You know, they had that head-scratcher loss to Marshall a few weeks back, and everyone kind of just wrote them off. And they come back and win in Ruston. So UTEP's just kind of been all over the place. They've got Sule Boom, 28 points last night, 12 rebounds, great performance out of him. They really play ferocious defense, and UTEP is really well coached, and that's what's really going to help them down the stretch of the season. And that's what I love about them. You know, we talked about our women's team last week. They had to play 3 road games in 5 days. UTEP is in that stretch right now. They played at La Tech last night. They are at Southern Miss tomorrow, and then on Monday they're at Middle Tennessee. So that's, you know, pretty hard stretch other than Southern Miss. Pretty impressive that they got that first win. If they can go 3-0, they're right back in this thing. So watch out for UTEP.
Yeah, and
well,
Lions
that's right.
coming from the underground and they've been a pleasant surprise for me this season. But moving forward, it's really important for teams to win their home games. I mean, obviously, you love to win as many games as you can on the road, but win your home games, and Louisiana Tech has not been able to do that. But UTEP here, winning on the road, yeah, there's definitely a sneaky team. They're coming up from the underground. The Miners are coming up from the underground.
Well, and they would be second in the East if they were in the East, and I've been saying that for weeks. I really like this UTEP team, and, you know, with a lot of teams leaving the Conference USA, they are a team that's going to be reckoned with. I think they're going to grow really well. They're coached by Joe Golding, a great, fantastic coach, great history at you know, at UTEP, and then, you know, he comes from Abilene Christian. So this is just an exciting team, sneaky team for sure, and even coming into these 3 road games they have, you cannot count them out. They're going to be a threat.
Another team that's really interesting to look at is Western Kentucky, who initially, you know, they had a really great run last year, but it's not looked the same, but it's not one that you initially count them out. What do you think about that?
Yeah, definitely don't count them out. They finally found their stride. They finally found their stride this season. They've won 6 straight now, all wins by more than 6 points. And So they're not playing close games like Marshall. Like they're not playing 1-point games every night. They're beating teams pretty convincingly now. I talked last week about the two guys they were missing from this season, Charles Bassey and Tavian Hollingsworth, two of their better players from last year. They've had their other veterans really step up now. We saw Davian McKnight now the team leader with 15.7 points a game. He scored 18 or more points in 3 out of the last 4 games. They've got Josh Anderson shooting 49% from the field. So all these veterans that they have from last year's team and from years in the past are now stepping up, and that's what's going Western's way.
Yeah, and they had a huge transition season this season after losing a lot of the better players from last year, and now these experienced players who have been there before are now stepping up into the bigger roles and playing up to their full potential. So Western Kentucky is starting to play better as the season is coming to an end, and you always have to watch for a team that ends the season well, especially when you get into conference tournament play. And they're not a team that I'd want UNT to have to face, but we may have to face them if Western were to get to the Conference USA Championship if UNT does as well.
Yeah, Joe Golding for UTEP is one of the better coaches that really makes an impact on games on a regular basis for CUSA. Rick Stansberry is also one of those guys at Western Kentucky. And just with how disciplined and efficient that this team is, this is not a team that I want UNT to play in the tournament. And they may end up being on that 2, 3, 4, 5 line. So UNT may have to play them pretty early in this tournament. So I'd be scared for that.
And then, you go ahead.
Oh, no. Well, I was just going to say, I mean, the thing is for UNT, it's like Western Kentucky is on this great development, and so is UNT. So these are going to be two teams that if they do face off, I mean, it's going to be a scary, scary game, and it could go either way. That's what's terrible about college basketball and great about college basketball is every game is anyone's game. And so it makes you nervous as a UNT fan as well.
Another game to keep in mind is they've got a hard one on the road against Middle Tennessee. And if you're going to win the East, you have to beat the best team. And right now, the Middle Tennessee team is the best. So to see them at least win that game, that could be a big turning point. And they could even beat the East right now with how that's all going down.
Yeah, the Middle Tennessee Blue Raiders, really fun and interesting team. They've got 9 players on their roster that average 13 or more points a game, which is really impressive. UNT usually runs like 6 or 7 guys. 9 is really impressive if they play that much on a regular basis. They've got 3 different starting guards that average double-digit points, led by Josh Jefferson, who's one of the best shooters in CUSA, 14.5 points a game, 44% from the field, 37% from 3. So he's really been really good. Their starting lineup and really all these guys that they've been playing have been really good. Middle Tennessee State and FAU, who UNT just beat, have been the only 2 really consistent teams in the East this season. And they've been up at the top there, and they're still going to have to play each other this weekend tomorrow. So, FAU may have been looking ahead a little bit last night in that game because that's a huge one. And Middle Tennessee State deserves a lot of credit because they've been playing great. Still undefeated at home.
And they've won 9 of their last 10 games. But with that being said, only 2 of those wins have come against teams with winning records. But it's kind of hard to get a really good idea of what the East is in terms of how good or how bad or how should we really judge Middle Tennessee by beating all these lower-ranked teams. I'm not really sure in terms of how competitive will they be if they faced a UNT or if they faced a lot of these Western Division teams on a weekly basis. So we'll have to see, I guess, in the conference tournament how this Middle Tennessee team plays down the stretch.
Middle Tennessee
Absolutely.
State's 3-7 too on the road.
Speaking of a lot of these games, we've got a good old game making its first appearance in our next segment. When we come back, stick around. Welcome back to Mean Green Game Day. I'm your host, Armando Berry, and I'm still here in the studio with Michelle Brooks, Rachel Dickens, and Connor Hibbett and Justin Ballou. We've got a game for us today. This is going to be something different. We've got the Ball of Takes making its first appearance on Mean Green Game Day. I'm going to pull out a take, and we're all going to see our opinion on a particular topic. Are y'all ready?
I'm
Ready to go.
nervous.
All right, I
Ready?
hope they're ready. All right.
Watch out, maybe a little hot.
All right. All right. All right, here's a good one. This is an easy one to start off. CUSA will be a 2-bid conference for March Madness. Who's the most passionate about this? Who wants to take
The
this one?
answer's no. I'm sorry. The answer's no. There's just no way. In the NCAA, we're too small of a conference, and unfortunately, that's just how it goes. A lot of other conferences get kind of stuck like that, too. You look at UTEP for years and years under Billy Gillespie and Don Haskins, they would get that extra bid, even if they weren't, top in their conference, but that's because they were such a strong program and historically built team. Conference USA just doesn't have that, and it doesn't go to say it's not fair. Like, it's not fair, but also you have to have 2 teams that are just crazy solid, and UNT's been that team, but I don't know who else has been that crazy shocking.
UAB has the potential, but they've had too many bad losses,
Right.
which
I
has
would
kind of
say
held them
all
back.
of all of the records in Conference USA, none of them have like big games. None of them have those big victories that you can be like, oh, there's a big quad one victory. There's a big quad 2 victory, but they're not really there this year.
UAB does though. They're actually 4-3 against the first 2 quadrants. They just have so many bad losses holding them back. If they had either beaten Marshall or Old Dominion, their resume may be lining up to be at large if they were to go far in the conference tournament. But there's no way. UNT would probably be the only team at this point that has a chance for an at large. But again, no quad 1 wins. The couple quad 2 losses or quad 1 losses against Kansas and Miami back in that ESPN Events Invitational tournament early in the season. So with UAB just losing those big or those games against bad teams, there's really no way.
I agree with y'all. It just doesn't look like it's going to be that year. Maybe if UAB was like a really great team and then UNT, we've kind of been great the past 2 or 3 years historically, but I think there are just more mid-major programs who have had great historical runs and that would better deserve that.
And we talk about Conference USA with all the better teams. They're all from the West Division, which kind of goes back to what I was saying on the last block. But
Which means they all beat each other up too.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
it hurts all of them.
I mean, that's what was happening when we were talking about that last block just now. I mean,
But when you play a lot of teams, a lot of difficult teams back to back to back, it also gets you more tournament ready. So that could also be said.
All right, let's dive into our second topic. OU women's basketball has been one of the best teams to watch.
I mean, they've been a very good offensive team. You've got the top 3-point shooter in NCAA for men's and women's with Taylor Robertson with over 300. It's insane to see what's happened. And then getting a new coach with Jenny Bronchek, they've got a new intensity. Last year they were 12-12. This year they're top of the they're one of the top teams in the conference. It's nice to see that. And it's just crazy how much they can make this jump. And then preseason they were only ranked 7th in the Big 12, and they're now at the top. It's great to see.
well, and they beat Baylor, so that's another big thing. I mean, a program like that. So it's under a new head coach. This is extremely impressive. I don't know if I would say they're the best team for women's basketball in the country because they're not. But I mean, it's really encouraging to see this program develop. And they've had 2 really great wins over top 25 teams throughout this season too. So. I mean, I like Oklahoma women, that's for sure.
And South Carolina women's team is obviously the best team in the country, but it seems like we're seeing a lot of other teams kind of rise up in the rankings in women's. Why do y'all think that is? Like, it's not like the same old UConn. And
Well, yeah, because we saw that UConn upset just a few weeks ago, and it's women's basketball in the NCAA is often a very historically built dynamic. You see UConn every year. South Carolina has become one of those teams. You always saw Mississippi State. You always saw Baylor. And now things are changing, and you've seen, a lot of coaching changes. Now you have Kim Mulkey over at LSU. So I think that women's basketball is just a very different game than men's basketball in terms of historically built programs being super consistent year in, year out.
I would say it's also one thing that women's basketball is that it's more dynamic in the fact that you could have a team win and then a team loss. It's very consistent based on the offense, and it's not as much defense related. I mean, if you can have a key player that can help your team, that's great. But if you look at the offensive numbers in women's basketball are a lot higher than for men, but that may be also because the defense isn't the same quality. But it also just depends on the conference as well.
And I think I really agree with Michelle, the thing that you pointed out with those almost like dynasties being built. I think I was watching the South Carolina girls game last night against Auburn. They were playing it. I think it just really shows how great those coaches are. Dawn Staley, she's had a great era with them since she's been there. And I think ESPN, the commentator, they were raving about how much she doesn't, they asked her, do her players go to her plan or does she build around them? She said she builds around them. She uses the talent as the weapons that they are. I think that's the really thing that makes South Carolina and those great teams that have been sticking around for over history such a great team to watch.
Well, that's the thing about women's basketball, too, is it's a very different sport than men's basketball. It's a lot more fundamental. It's a lot more disciplined, work within your systems. And so you see a lot of role players come out truthfully. And in men's basketball, sometimes you only see those top 2-3 players every single game. And the UNT women basketball team last night was a great example of that. You really saw everyone contribute and get out there. Now, Quincy Noble is the only one in double figures, but we talked about Jazz all over the floor. Allie Gamis took 3 charges coming off of a back injury. It's women's basketball is just kind of a different sport. It's played differently.
Definitely. All right, let's go on to topic number 3. Memphis men's basketball team will make the big dance.
Memphis has had a crazy season. You know, Penny Hardaway had such high expectations for this roster. They get, you know, James Wiseman. They have just a great recruiting class last season, and things just haven't panned out. And, you know, the American isn't really that strong this year, so it's like, what has gone wrong? No, they did get that big win at Houston the other night, ending Houston's long winning streak, which actually kind of puts them back on the bubble now.
37-game home winning streak.
Yeah, 37. I mean, that's incredible. And that game probably puts Memphis now back on the bubble. And they still have some big games. They just won at Cincinnati. That's another one of those big bubble games. So they're still in this thing, although Penny Hardaway has had some things go wrong with this roster this year.
And a very talented team, so they're very capable of surprising some teams.
Well, they're one of those programs, too, you can never count out. That's what I love about March Madness and the big dance, because it's always, you know, that exciting. You don't know what's going to happen, and Memphis is one of those teams, you know, every once in a while, and they can be sneaky, and they've been sneaky. I mean, we talked about those games just now that they've won, so.
I don't think they're going to make it, though. My worry for them is they've got a lot of losses that are going to outweigh those wins, in my opinion. There's a lot of the internal battle between those new freshmen and then the players from last year that I don't think they've ever really been able to resolve. I mean, they've been able to resolve some, but not been able completely. And then they also have the problem with no true point guard being out there. And so you have to run your offense somehow, and they've been doing the best they can, but I don't think they've done that well enough to at least make the tournament as of now.
I'm excited. These are some good ones. The men's basketball team for Purdue is a pretender.
Well, keep it. Their defense is like 98th in the country in efficiency. Now, they do have the top-ranked offense, but that defense is going to hurt them in the tournament. And I just don't, you know, we saw them obviously last year lose to UNT in the first round. That defense really hurt them last year. And when you're such a great shooting team that really just relies on your three-point game and you don't play great defense, you get upset in the tournament because you have games where, you know, Jaden Ivey doesn't shoot well, you know, Edie struggles in the post, just things like that. And that has happened for Purdue this season, and their defense isn't good enough to pick them up. So I agree that Purdue's a pretender for sure.
That being said, though, take out last season, so congratulations to us, of course, but take out last season, Purdue usually has a really good run in the tournament. A few years ago when Virginia won it all, Purdue should have beat them. Virginia was very fortunate to pull out that game. Of course, Virginia won a lot of close games during that tournament in 2019. But Purdue is a team, and I think coming off of last season's disappointing run, losing in the first round to UNT, I think they're going to want to bounce back from that.
My only thing with the Big Ten is that if you look at the history of what they've done recently, the last team to win in March Madness and win the whole thing was in 2000 with Tom Izzo in March and Michigan State. So I'm a little worried about at least their record as of recently. They have had teams go to the final game, but being able to finish is the hardest thing for them. So I'm a little worried about that.
Well, we were talking about them just last week, and me and Connor especially, and I was calling them sneaky. But Justin, I'm glad you brought up how, you know, they have those big games and then they don't, and they sometimes struggle defensively. And at this time in the season, you cannot afford to play like that. They're definitely on the bubble, and I think that they'll make the dance, but.
It's either Purdue or Purdue. We just don't know what team's going to show up.
I guess
Connor's been waiting to give us
depends
that
on
one.
it also depends on how you classify pretender, because like Purdue could go to the Elite Eight and you say that's a pretender run because they should have gone farther. So I guess it kind of depends how you classify pretender.
I agree. I think it depends on your expectations, but I think as long as they're in the dance, basketball, it's a make or miss game, so it really just depends on how many shots they make, how many they miss, and if their defense is enough that can carry them.
Well, and that freshman, I mean, I was all over him last week. He's what, like 7'4", and he is a meaty man. He will run you over in the lane, and that is a big, big threat.
He doesn't even have to jump.
No, but he is he's such a threat. I mean, you look at Gonzaga, and they have their freshman who's 7'4", but he's skin and bones. This guy has big threat.
All right. Let me know when you want me to stop, Connor.
No, stop.
Okay.
Maybe this is going to be one of mine.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, no.
This is literally peeling off the other one that we just did. Purdue will get upset before the Elite Eight.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, I think so.
I think they're going to make the Elite Eight, so.
I don't think they'll make the Elite Eight. I'm worried for
I kind
them.
of see them making the Elite Eight. I mean, they're a little sneaky. They're a little sneaky, and March, anything can happen. You guys know I say it all the time, so I don't know. I think they can make the Elite Eight.
And something that we should also point out, Purdue is obviously going to make the big dance, and they're going to be a 1 or a 2 seed. They're not going to be a 4 or 5 seed having to face UNT again, so they should be fine in the first round at least.
Yeah.
I'm going Purdue, man. I'm not. Sorry.
You saw that 98th
All right.
ranked defense.
We're going to do one more real quick. Okay, big one right here. Arizona makes their first Final Four appearance since
Finally.
2001. Connor.
Yeah, to me right now, Arizona. So I said a couple weeks ago, Kentucky was playing the best basketball in the country. To me, Kentucky's still playing some of the best basketball in the country. But right now, after Kentucky's lost to Tennessee, the Wildcats are playing the best basketball in the country. I don't think right now there is a team that can beat them, whether it's in the Pac-12 or the LAC-12 sometimes, or anybody else in the country. I think Arizona is destined to make their first Final Four since 2001.
Arizona is the last team that actually won for the Pac-12. They won in 1997. So it'd be nice to see them do well and have a good run.
Definitely, well, guys, that was a lot of fun, but we've got some more fun coming up when we dive into this weekend's games next. As a college student, when you study hard for some of your exams, get your confidence up and you feel good. And you pass that test. Or sometimes you don't. We're going to preview the fate of our women's team against UAB, who is second in the West Division this Saturday after getting real confident from a 5-game win streak. Rachel, I'm going to go to you on this one. How are the Mean Green looking?
They're looking great. I mean, they already have beaten this UAB team once, and that was on the road. So being at home, it's going to be a nice advantage, get the fans involved. They also had a defense growing off of this. This is kind of the game that, like, you saw them turn around the season. I'd like to see that even better, though, this time, though, with people just being together and making the team more consistent.
Well, yeah, I mean, that recent meeting that we had with UAB, we won 67-54, and it was in Birmingham. Those COVID cancellations might have come in handy with this game because we just saw them 2 weeks ago. So I think coming off of just that and having that film so close and knowing what that you're going to expect them to throw at you is big. But that game was just big for the Mean Green when we played them last. I mean, Quincy had 13, Amber Dixon off the bench had 20, Jazz had 14. Allie Gamis, my one thing is she had 4 fouls, and so did Jalen Mallard. So that's kind of a key here, I think, tonight is watching the fouls. You can't have, some really strong offensive players on your team fouling like that.
And that game that they played before was back on February 7th, which was during that 5-day, 3-game road trip, which was really tough. So that was a really impressive win. Amber Dixon, obviously, it's 20 points in that game, 6 rebounds, 2 off the bench for her. Jay-Z and Jackson, 14 points. If they can have another group effort like this, I really like their chances. And you got to think UNT is coming in with some confidence to this game. This is a team you already beat a couple weeks ago, as we said, 5-game winning streak, a team that you beat on the road, too. So now you're going to get your fans involved, too, like you said, Rachel. So everything's lining up for this to be a great performance for UNT. They're coming in hot on this winning streak. UAB just had a loss the other night, an upset loss. So coming in now, maybe hanging their head while UNT's coming in red hot. So hopefully these trajectories continue.
Man, a huge game because it sets up a couple games in the future against Louisiana Tech and Southern Miss at the top of the conference. And as y'all said earlier in the show, the West Division for the women's basketball in Conference USA, everybody's so close. And so you got to win again. You got to win the home games down the stretch, and this is a game UNT has to win.
Yeah, you have 4 teams in this West Division within a game and a half of one another, and really all still in the mix for the division. These next 3 games, this is the stretch run right here for UNT. UAB, Southern Miss, and La Tech are the 3 teams that are really in this mix beside you to win this division. So this is the stretch that's going to determine your season. I'm excited to see how they come out and perform.
One thing to keep in mind is when we did play UAB, we got their main players and their top players into foul trouble. I'd say that's why you saw Destiny McGee do so well in that game, because the players who would have traditionally been there weren't able to do that. So one thing to keep in mind is maybe trying to do that again and trying to execute that and get those charges that we were able to do against UAB and implement that into the plan.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to bring up, is that foul trouble that UAB got into, and they got into it pretty early on. So it's key for UAB tomorrow to take care of that ball and not, foul all over the place on UNT, and they have to be ready for those players to be in the game, and not be fouling out. So it's definitely a test for the Mean Green, I'd say. The other thing is that UAB rebounded us last time we met, 34-39, but rebounds count every bit, and this Mean Green team really has to attack the basket because everyone's neck and neck. UAB is going to come in here super aggressive against, a team who beat them at their home. They want to come in here and beat this Mean Green team in the super pit.
And I really agree with what you said, Justin, earlier. I don't think this is just a test. I think this is a must-win because if you look at our schedule, this is our last game at home for a little while because when we do play Southern Miss and LA Tech, who we will be fighting in the standings for position 4, those teams are going to be on the road. And, Michelle, I think you pointed out earlier that this team can be a little bit of a roller coaster when it comes to playing on the road, and I think we really need this home win before we take on those possibly even tougher games coming up.
Well, that's right. I mean, I've been saying it all season long. You guys are probably tired of hearing it. It's all about momentum for this team, and they have great momentum, and it's building off of this UAB game that they just won a few weeks ago. So it's key for the Mean Green to keep this game going, especially for the latter half of this season, these last few road games, because they are big games, big threats. And UNT is right there. They could, if they went out, they could finish with a very high, maybe number 2 seed in the conference tournament, which is even better for your chances in that play. So,
and think about the difference it'll be mentally for the women if they were to beat UAB rather than lose and then having to play 2 straight games on the road. The psyche would just be totally affected if they were to lose this game. So this is a must-win for UNT.
So one thing for UNT is that defense. We've been talking about it, and we've been talking about how they've changed the dynamic a little bit earlier this season. So all season their opponents have averaged 63 points. But in these last 5 games, they've only had the opponents averaging about 50. So that's one thing I'd like to see them implement, and I'd like to see them even lower UAB, even more than they did last time with them only getting 54.
And I think I have that very, very high on my checklist for as far as key players. I didn't even look at that. I just want to see the team defense. I think it just makes it so much easier for them to score when they create turnovers to get to transition buckets because they have a pretty athletic team for themselves. And I think it's just a lot harder once they go against the better teams to sort through those tough defenses in a half-court set. And if you look at our team, besides Quincy Noble and then Kendall Magruder, whenever she spots up, it's really, really hard to create their own for these players to create their own shot.
well, and that's what we saw last night out of the Mean Green is they were finally doing that. They were finally creating those shots, which was major. They were taking the good, clean shots, not settling for a whole lot of threes on the outside because, honestly, we're not a great three-point shooting team. Quincy Noble shot really great from the three-point line last night, that's for sure, but she hasn't throughout the season consistently. You have Kendall Magruder, who I'm extremely excited about because she can shoot the ball. She can shoot the three. That's what she was made to do. But they were really working the ball, and we saw a lot of, those 10-foot short corners from Maddie Townley. We saw Quincy Noble stepping in, giving that 17-foot, 18-footer range. That's her spot right there inside the arc. So it was smart plays. It was taking the right shot. It was making good, strong passes. Last week I was complaining about the cross-court passes left and right. And they were doing that last night, but the passes were so much stronger. They just looked so much more disciplined. This team is in a system, so it's encouraging to continue to build off of it.
So you guys mentioned the shooting and the defense. I think this game, it comes down to the rebounding. You have Zakiya Weathersby for UAB, top 20 in the nation, averaging 11 rebounds per game. In the first matchup, UNT was able to limit her to 3 rebounds, and that was really a big key in that game. And Madison Townley's averaging 7.5 rebounds for the season. She struggles against some of these bigger-bodied girls, and that's what Weathersby is. So Madison Townley's going to have to bring her A game. And again, I think this game is kind of won in the trenches. Like in football, it's at your offensive line. Rebounding is really the trenches of basketball, and that's where this game is going to be won. So UNT has to win that battle again.
And that's going to be Jazz all over again. She was awesome last game. I think she's going to carry that into this game. And I think the coach has made a point of emphasis. Michelle, you stated the earlier game, rebounding could have been better. And I think this time I think it will be, and I think it'll start with Jazz.
Well, that's the thing. I talk to Jaylee Mitchell before every home game when I'm there, and she always says that is the #1 key to the game. Crash the boards, rebound every single game, no matter who the opponent is. And that, I think, is going to be the key focus tomorrow morning, obviously, for this Mean Green team.
It'll also be nice to see if they can make some production off the bench points, which is something they were able to do in the UAB game. And they were also able to be able to get points in the paint, which is something they've kind of gone to more because of that 3 not necessarily always going down. So going to Lampkin or Townley, or even doing it themselves and going in for it, even if they don't get the points, as I said last week, they can get a foul. And that's huge and crucial, and especially with what we did against UAB last time, getting them into foul trouble and being able to make shots off that.
Definitely, Rachel. I want to dive a little more into what side of Quincy Noble do you think we're going to see on the offensive end? We usually always get really great consistency from her on the defensive end, but sometimes in a lot of this 5-game win streak, not all of them have been 20-plus point performances by her. Some of them, she's probably scored about 10, and then on the last game, she scored 24. What version of Quincy Noble do you think we're going to see on the offensive end?
I'm a little worried for Noble. She's just coming off a big game, but I think if she's able to develop off that and even to get 10, the rest of the team needs to rally around that. Even if she's not having her best game, it's team consistency. But I think she could have a big game here.
So I think she's definitely going to come out here playing well tonight. And the thing is about Quincy Noble, we're talking about her point production, okay? And we've been super critical. And even last week, I feel like we were critical of Quincy Noble when we shouldn't have been as critical as we were. She is a strong player for this team offensively, but it's been her defense that's been crazy these past few weeks too. She is the energizer bunny for this team, and you can feel it contagiously. She's having so much fun out there. I don't see her stopping tomorrow. I don't. I think she's going to come out. She's not thinking when she's shooting the ball. She's just shooting it. She's making good passes. All of this team is playing off of each other really well. Quincy Noble's going to come out here and play just as good tomorrow.
And you
so
talked
real
about
quick,
her.
who do you think's going to win? Who do you think's going to win?
I'll go with UNT. It's a huge home
I think
game.
UNT gets the win too.
UNT.
UNT, but I think they really got to keep Weathersby in check.
I think you have to play exactly like you did last night in those systems, and
Okay.
you will have this win.
Looks like we are all Mean Green out right now. Now we've sorted through our women's team, let's take a look at our men's team when we come back. Thanks for sticking around on Mean Green Game Day. I'm your host, Armando Berry, and I'm still here with Connor Hibbett, Justin Ballou, Michelle Brooks, and Rachel Dickens. The Mean Green are on their last stint of a 3-game road trip and now face the best team of that run, in my opinion, in second place UAB, who had previously beat the Mean Green earlier this season. Just I want to go to you on this one. What do the Mean Green have to do to come home with their 12th win in a row tomorrow?
Well, UAB has been really one of the only CUSA teams that has had UNT's number. UAB has won the last 3 meetings here, but the good news is that each of these losses has really motivated this team. Last season, UNT lost the final 2 games of the regular season against UAB at home, and then went on to obviously win the tournament and beat Purdue. This year, they lose to UAB and then go on this 11-game win streak that they're currently on. So I guess that's the kind of the silver lining here is that every time they lose, they end up playing well after. But this is going to be a big game. UAB is a lot like UNT in terms of just preaching efficiency and discipline on offense and defense. UAB is going to be a little bit more creative and schematic, specifically in their offense, than UNT, but both teams play a pretty similar style of play. UAB's 31st in offensive efficiency, while UNT's down at 92nd, so not exactly the same scheme offensively. UAB is going to push the pace a little bit more, 75th in tempo, but this is just going to be a game where you have to play defense. You have to find a way to slow this team down. Like I said, they're not going to push the tempo, but they're a lot more fast-paced than UNT is. So definitely a team that you just have to slow down because they have a ton of streaky shooters that can get hot at any time on a nightly basis. So just play good defense, slow them down as best you can tempo-wise.
You brought it up that this was actually going to be a big game for UNT because it is the battle of the 2 juggernauts, but do y'all think that actually is a must-win for them, or do you think this is one that it can really go either way in, as far as momentum?
Well, it's definitely a bigger game for UAB because UAB is hosting now the top dogs in the tournament. A team that they've really, they've had our number, honestly. They feel confident coming into this game. Now they're 2 games back after these losses. So this is honestly a bigger game for the Blazers. So expect them to come out firing, but a big game for UNT nonetheless. They can almost lock up the West Division with this win.
Right. And don't let UAB's recent few games fool you. This is a team that plays to their opponent's level, unfortunately for them, because really if they played up to their full potential every single game, preaching that consistency, this team would be really, really difficult to beat. But fortunately, they play to their opponent's level, which means, unless you don't like close games, it's a good thing for UNT because now, I'll say one thing I'll say about UNT: they're undefeated on the road this season. Only 2 teams in the country. Gonzaga is the other team. So this is just an incredible job by UNT this season to be consistent. So one team here is consistent, the other team is not.
Well, and this is a very different UNT team than what we saw on January 6th. I mean, UNT kind of struggled to close out that game. It was these late game plays that really gave it up. UNT was only down 2 with about 1:50 left, and they lost by 6. So, but Connor, we were talking about earlier how UNT has made that difference, and they are that team now that's clutch at the end, and we have changed it up. So I think, UNT has a little bit of an upper hand here. Also, UAB beat us in the Super Pit. The Mean Green want to go in there and beat them at home just as bad, I'm sure.
I'll say the one thing, you mentioned the road wins that we have. UAB has the same thing with home wins. They're 7-0 at home. So I really think if we win this game, we're going to really have momentum going into the next games. I don't think it's a must-win either, but it would be a really, really nice win, even for just our resume, just to go somewhere and win again. As we said, road games, it's going to be more March Madness, and even like the tournament's going to look like. So being able to give momentum when you don't have the momentum necessarily on your side is a great thing to do.
And like Justin said, it pretty much locks up the division for UNT because we still have to play Louisiana Tech at UTEP, and that's going to be a sneaky road game at the end of the season, right before the conference tournament. So
Right, and if UAB wins this game, I think it's a statement win for them. They're saying, this is a team we've beaten 4 straight times. We're back in the division race now. If they win this game, they're 1 game back. If UNT wins this game, I think it sends the message that they are, in fact, the best team in CUSA because this is the only team that they've struggled against, and it's been a consistent problem that the Blazers just their scheme, their defense, they press well on the defensive end. And so, this is a huge game for both teams. Statement win, regardless of who wins.
Absolutely, Justin. And I think this is going to be a really, really tough game, just like the one that we had the other day was on Thursday. But I want you to break it down a little more for me. What are going to be some of the keys that the UNT need to focus on to get this win?
Well, as I said, I think the key is slowing them down tempo-wise. They're not going to push the pace, but a ton of streaky shooters, and really the only way to slow down streaky shooting is not only good defense, as we always play, but really slow pace. Now, one guy I think UNT has to keep an eye on is Jordan Walker. This is a guy that now I think everyone in CUSA knows. He's very consistent now. He's top 40 in the nation, 3rd in CUSA in scoring at 19.3 points a game. He shoots 40% from the field. He scored double-digit points in all but 1 game this season. This guy's just been insane. In the last 30 days, this guy's had the best month of anyone in the country. He's had a 36-point game against La Tech. He's had a 42-point game against Middle Tennessee. Those are 2 of the top teams in conference. And in 2 of those other games, he scored 20. Or in 4 of those other games, he scored 20 points. This guy's coming in hot, just introducing himself to the conference over the last month. 36 points, 42-point game. That's just insane. So watch out for him. He's one of those streaky shooters for them.
Well, and you have to look at the last time that these 2 teams met back in January too. UNT's got to make sure that they take care of the ball. They beat us on rebounds 39-25. And this is a big defensive, strong team in the lane. You saw UNT, struggle against FAU inside the lane. They were really physical. So that's going to be really key for especially Abu Usman to step in tonight and be strong and physical just like the Mean Green need him to be.
Trey Jemison is the exact type of center/forward that Abu struggles against. So he cannot get into foul trouble tomorrow for UNT to have a chance in this game because Thomas Bell would be very outmatched against a guy as big and as physical as Trey Jemison.
You mentioned the rebounds. I also think second chance points are going to be a huge difference in this game. In the last game, UAB had 15 and UNT only had 1. And that easily is the difference in this game. If you'd taken away all of those, the game would have been pretty even.
When you hear those stats, though, it really does sound like a very different Mean Green team than we've seen in these past few games. So I am confident about this game, though, for the Mean Green.
I want to take a look at the guard battle real quick. As far as Tyler Perry, Marjorie McBride, and the guys that we have, who do you think is going to be the most important guard and really set the pace for us?
I got a feeling Perry's going to put himself back on the map. To me, he hasn't had the best last couple of weeks. But that being said, I know the opponent has probably really focused. Exactly, thank you. They really focused on him and making other players for UNT really step up. I think this is the game where Perry, again, kind of puts himself back on the map. I think he has a clutch shot, kind of like Louisiana Tech, late, maybe not with hardly any seconds left, but with late game situations, clutch. Hey, I'm going to mention something that we've struggled with all season that's going to be big in this game, but free throw shooting.
Yes.
And this is going to be
100%.
and let's put the ball into Perry's hands instead of
exactly.
Nothing against Thomas Bell, he plays really, really hard, but in the clutch, but with
in a clutch
1 or
moment,
2
you
minutes.
need the player that can make the free
Thank
throw
you.
with the hands in his
And
ball.
that's Tyler
Free throws
Perry.
win basketball games time and time again. This last time we met, UAB shot 71.4% from the line. We shot 53.8% from the line. I love our basketball team. I think we're a great basketball team. These boys need to be forced to stay in the gym every day after practice and shoot 100 makes until they can leave. Free throws are what makes a championship team. And right now, that could be the difference for this UNT team in the dance.
That easily was almost the difference last night against FAU, or on Thursday night against FAU. And then another thing that they need to do is just be themselves. And even if they don't get those free throws, they need to keep going. But the one thing about Perry is he's our best free throw shooter. He averages about 90. And I mean, you got to give it in your best person's hands. And at this point, Perry's the only one who's been consistent from the line. So.
And our free throw stats obviously are not that good, and we get to the line a lot. It's not like it's skewed where we only have a few shot attempts all season. So this is something that we obviously have to improve on. That was something that we did very well last year, and if we want to have our clutch play again, if we want to have a Cinderella story, we got to shoot better from the free throw line.
And Tyler Perry, I think, is also the key to this game for UNT. He hasn't even been playing well, and he's been leading the team in scoring over these past few games. So that just really shows how much of an impact he's going to make and how good of a player he is.
Key player for me is JJ Murray, only because we didn't see a whole lot of him out of the game at FAU. And I'm not talking about point production. We don't see a lot of points produced out of him, but he is that guy that is the sixth man almost, backup for every single person. He's the defensive guy. But last night he had 3 fouls. He couldn't make a shot. He shot the ball 6 times. He just didn't seem like himself. This Mean Green team didn't seem like themselves. So I think tonight they're going to come in a little bit, or not tonight, when they play UAB, they're going to come in a little bit more focused. Now, this UAB team that we're talking about, they kind of have a bad taste in their mouth, too. So that's scary for the Mean Green. They just came off that loss to ODU, and it wasn't pretty. 72-81, you don't want to lose like that.
JJ Murray is always a key, and I would say he's the only player I've ever seen that contributes points even when he's not scoring, because his defense, he moves his feet so well, he rotates, and guards just don't want to go against him. Like if UNT puts him on Jordan Walker will maybe have like 10 points in this game. Like JJ Murray is the key to this defense. He really is, and he has been since last season.
That's something we were able to do against FAU. I mean, Michael Forrest, he averages 14.5. He only had 7 against us on Thursday night, which is a huge thing. And then the other thing to keep in mind with that is just being able to watch out for players that aren't Walker, because there's going to be someone who's going to step up. There's going to be someone like Rosado did for FAU last night, or Thursday.
Well, and you look at, they have Jackson Kwan, and he had a big game against ODU, 17 points. He had 21 points in their game against Rice. So he's another high production player on this offense. And when you have this many threats, because UNT had players make some offensive boards last night, but we didn't see, as great of a scoring distribution. But this UAB team seems to have quite a lot of scorers.
I think it's odd that UNT always struggles against UAB, because typically UNT's success comes against teams with guard play and guards that can score like UAB has. So this game is just going to, again, come down to that battle in the paint, I think, with Abu and just getting the rebounds. And I think our guards will be able to handle their guards on the perimeter shooting.
And Justin, I want you to play your crystal ball, man. What's your prediction for the game, and what do you think is going to come down to?
I think UAB gets the win here, and because I think it's a bigger game for them. They're at home. UNT can win these 2 games next week and still be in perfect position for the division. So I just think it's more of a must-win. UAB is coming in more desperate. So and it's at home. So I'm going to take UAB.
I'm going to say UNT pulls it out somehow, some way. I just got this feeling. I'm going to say UNT 64, UAB, UNT 64, UAB 62.
Real quick on this side, what do y'all think?
Okay, I've got to go with UNT. I mean, I think they have it. I think they're focused, and they don't want to be beat now.
I got to go with UAB. I'm a little worried about turnovers in the beginning, and that was something we had to struggle with at FAU.
No, this would be the win of the season if UNT wins this game. I will just point that out. We said it was La Tech before. This would be the win of the year right here.
I'm taking UNT this one. I think we really take this win and just show our muscle to the rest of the conference. That concludes our second episode of Mean Green Game Day. Thank you so much for tuning in, and make sure to catch up with us again next Friday at 3. See you next time.